First contact fallout. In my 3 centuries as Chief Diplomatic Coordinator for the Galactic Confederation, I had overseen first contact with 73 species. Each encounter followed predictable patterns: awe, fear, then eventual acceptance of their place in the cosmic hierarchy. But humans, they shattered every preconception we had about emerging civilizations. I remember the exact moment our carefully crafted first contact protocols fell apart. I was standing on the bridge of the Harmony of Worlds, our most prestigious diplomatic vessel, as we emerged from fold space near Earth's moon. The ship's AI had selected this position specifically to create the maximum psychological impact, our massive vessel suddenly appearing like an artificial moon, demonstrating our technological superiority without explicit threat. Interesting, Sub-Commander Vress said, his crystalline form refracting the bridge's soft light. No panic detected in their global communications, no military mobilization, no emergency broadcasts. I flexed my sensory tendrils, tasting the electromagnetic spectrum around us. He was right. The humans were continuing their daily activities as if nothing had happened. Their media continued regular broadcasts, their militaries maintained normal patrol patterns, their financial markets showed no disruption. Perhaps their detection systems are more primitive than we thought, I suggested, though something felt wrong. In all my years of first contact, I'd never seen such calm. Incoming transmission, our communications officer announced. Text only, encoded in. Wait, this can't be right. Explain, I commanded. They're using our own diplomatic protocols, not a simplified version we prepared for first contact, the full current specification. Before I could process this impossibility, the message appeared on our main display. Greetings, Diplomatic Vessel Harmony of Worlds. Welcome to Sol System. Please maintain your current position while we dispatch a representative. Any movement closer to Earth will be considered a hostile action. Transmission ends. The message was in perfect galactic standard, using diplomatic formatting that should have been unknown to them. More disturbing was the casual mention of our ship's name, information that should have been impossible for them to know. They're bluffing, Vress declared. Their orbital defense systems are primitive. Their ships use chemical propulsion. They can't possibly. A new ship appeared beside us, not through fold space or any known FTL method. It simply appeared, as if it had always been there. It was small, perhaps 1/10 the size of the Harmony, its hull a dull gray that seemed to drink in light. No energy emissions we could detect, no sign of propulsion or life support systems. Fascinating design. Came a human voice over our comm system, speaking perfect galactic standard with what I would later learn was a British accent. Your fold space drive uses an interesting variant of Kessler field manipulation. We've been meaning to test some theories about its vulnerabilities. I felt my primary heart skip a beat. They couldn't possibly know about Kessler fields. That technology was centuries beyond their development stage. Unless. How long have you known about us? I asked, dreading the answer. Oh, we detected your first observation drones about 50 years ago, the human replied cheerfully. Quite clever, disguising them as asteroids. We decided to let them stay. Much easier to feed you the data we wanted you to see. By the way, Chief Coordinator, your 10-year report on the Proxima species was fascinating reading, though I believe you misinterpreted their crystalline architecture as religious monuments rather than quantum computing nodes. My tendrils went cold. That report was sealed in our most secure databases. The implications were staggering. The humans had not only detected us decades ago, they had penetrated our security systems so thoroughly we never noticed. I don't understand, I admitted, abandoning diplomatic protocol. Why maintain the pretense? Why let us believe you were less advanced? Strategic advantage, of course. Though honestly, we expected you to notice the inconsistencies. Did none of you wonder why a species supposedly struggling with basic spaceflight had such detailed fictional accounts of interstellar warfare? or why our primitive communication networks contain such sophisticated encryption. We even leaked a few papers on theoretical physics that should have hinted at our true capabilities. A pause then. But perhaps that's unfair. It's a common failing among older civilizations, assuming that age equals advancement, that there's only one path of technological development. You looked at our rockets and saw primitive chemical propulsion. We saw them as a useful way to maintain the masquerade while we perfected our gravitic drive systems. The human ship shifted slightly, and suddenly our sensors could detect it properly. The energy readings were off the scale, suggesting technological capabilities far beyond our own. They had been hiding their true nature not out of fear or weakness, but because it was tactically advantageous to be underestimated. Now then, the human continued. Shall we discuss real diplomatic relations? As equals, we have so many fascinating technologies to trade. Unless, of course, you'd prefer to maintain the fiction that we're a primitive species in need of guidance. Looking at that small gray ship, knowing the technological prowess it represented and the strategic depth it implied, I made the only rational choice. I initiated the full diplomatic protocols for contact between peer civilizations. The humans had outmaneuvered us so thoroughly that our only option was to pretend we had intended this outcome all along. As I prepared for the first official meeting, I couldn't help but wonder what other surprises this remarkable species had in store. We thought we were studying them. In reality, they had been studying us, learning our weaknesses, analyzing our technologies, and preparing for every possible scenario. The galaxy would never be the same, and perhaps that had been humanity's plan all along. The silent defense. 26 hours after our first official contact with humanity, the Confederation Council demanded an emergency session. I stood before the assembled representatives of 87 spacefaring civilizations, trying to explain how thoroughly we had misread the situation on Earth. The council chamber was unnaturally quiet, normally filled with the subtle sounds of various species' biological processes, the crystalline chiming of the Vex, the low humming of Zarn energy fields, the liquid rippling of Melusian thought pools. Now there was only silence as they processed my report. Impossible, High Speaker Torax finally declared, his photosynthetic fronds darkening with skepticism. You suggest these humans not only detected our surveillance, but actively fed us false information for decades, without any of our monitoring systems detecting the deception. The evidence is irrefutable, I replied, trying to keep my tendrils from trembling. Their technological development did not follow standard progression patterns because they were deliberately hiding their advances. What we thought were primitive chemical rockets were merely a cover for their true space program. I activated the chamber's holographic display, showing the small gray ship that had appeared beside the Harmony of Worlds. This vessel, which they call a diplomatic escort, exhibits technology we barely understand. Their mastery of gravitational fields alone suggests capabilities far beyond what we thought possible for their development stage. Then they are a threat, declared War Master Kex of the Pradax Collective, his metallic scales rattling with agitation. If they have been deceiving us, preparing weapons in secret. With respect, War Master, came a new voice. You're making the same mistake we did. The chamber's massive doors opened to admit Ambassador Sarah Chen of Earth, her simple black suit a stark contrast to the elaborate biological and mechanical augmentations worn by most council representatives. She walked to the center of the chamber with a confidence that suggested she belonged there, which I was beginning to realize she did. You assume, she continued, that because we hid our capabilities, we must have hostile intent. Has it occurred to anyone that if we wanted conflict, we would have struck during the decades we spent studying your civilizations? While you thought you were watching primitive humans stumble toward the stars, we were learning everything about you, your technologies, your cultures, your weaknesses. The chamber erupted in alarmed chitters and electromagnetic pulses of distress. Ambassador Chen waited patiently for quiet before continuing. Instead, we chose to reveal ourselves peacefully, albeit on our own terms. Yes, we have technologies you don't understand. Yes, we've been preparing defenses against potential threats. But we've also been preparing for peaceful contact, studying how to integrate with galactic society without disrupting it. She gestured, and the holographic display changed to show a vast network of satellites orbiting Earth. Satellites our sensors had somehow never detected. Our defensive capabilities are extensive, but they are purely defensive. We developed them because we had to assume any advanced civilization might be hostile. Would you have done differently in our position? Pretty words, War Master Kex growled, but they don't explain why you maintained this deception for so long. Ambassador Chen smiled. An expression I was learning could mean many things with humans. Actually, we were hoping someone would figure it out. We left so many clues. Our entertainment media constantly depicted first contact scenarios. Our scientific papers contained subtle hints about our true capabilities. We even deliberately made mistakes in our primitive encryption to see if anyone would notice they were too sophisticated to be accidental. She turned slowly, meeting the eyes or sensory organs of each council member. Think of it as a test, not of our capabilities, but of yours. Would you recognize an intelligence that developed differently than expected? Could you see past your own assumptions about how civilization should progress? The answers, unfortunately, were no. You dare to test us? Forax's fronds had turned almost black with anger. We who have guided the development of countless species. Yes, Chen replied simply. Because that attitude, that older means wiser, that there is only one path to the stars, is dangerous. Humanity took a different path. While you focused on fold space technology, we explored quantum entanglement. While you developed energy weapons, we studied gravity manipulation. While you built massive ships to demonstrate power, we developed cloaking systems and mobile quantum arrays. She paused, letting her words sink in. We're not here to challenge the Confederation's authority. We're here to suggest that perhaps there are things we can teach each other. Humanity's greatest strength isn't our technology. It's our ability to imagine countless possibilities and prepare for them all. The chamber was silent again, but this time it was a thoughtful silence. I noticed several council members exhibiting their species' equivalents of embarrassment or chagrin. They were beginning to understand what I had realized on the harmony of worlds. Humanity hadn't just outsmarted us, they had used our own prejudices and assumptions against us. We invite any member of the Council to visit Earth, Ambassador Chen concluded. We will show you everything. Our cities, our technologies, our defensive systems. No more deception, no more hiding. But remember this. What you see now is only what we've chosen to reveal. Humanity's greatest defense isn't our weapons or our shields. It's that you can never be quite sure what else we might have prepared for. As the council chamber erupted in excited discussion, I watched Ambassador Chen return to her seat. She caught my eye and gave me another smile. This one, I was fairly certain, meant genuine amusement. Humanity had turned first contact into a masterclass in strategy, and I had a feeling they were just getting started. Adaptive warfare. The Pradax Collective made their move 3 days after the council session. Despite Ambassador Chen's diplomatic overtures, War Master Kex couldn't accept the idea of humans as equals. His battle fleet emerged from fold space near Mars, 400 ships strong, a show of force meant to intimidate Earth into accepting Confederation dominance. I watched from the observation deck of the Harmony of Worlds, my tendrils twisted in anxiety. The Pradax were known for their aggressive diplomacy, and their battle fleet had subjugated dozens of emerging civilizations. But as I observed the massive warships moving into attack formation, I noticed something odd. They're being herded, I whispered, suddenly understanding. The humans had allowed the Pradax fleet to enter the solar system, but subtle gravitational distortions were nudging them into a specific position. The Pradax, accustomed to being the most technologically advanced force in any conflict, didn't even notice. This is Admiral Helena Santos of Earth Defense Command. A calm voice announced on all frequencies. War Master Kex, your fleet has entered restricted space. Please withdraw to the orbit of Saturn for diplomatic discussions. Kex's response was predictably arrogant. You dare to give orders to the Pradax Collective. Your primitive defenses cannot hope to. He never finished the sentence. At that moment, Earth revealed why they had positioned the Pradax fleet exactly where they wanted them. The surface of Mars rippled like water. What we had assumed were natural geological features turned out to be massive doors as sections of the planet's surface slid apart, revealing a network of underground facilities that must have taken decades to construct. Enormous electromagnetic arrays emerged, their purpose becoming clear as they activated in perfect synchronization. The Pradax fleet found itself caught in a web of intersecting gravitational fields. Ships designed to withstand energy weapons and kinetic impacts were helpless against forces that distorted space itself. Their engines, trying to compensate for the gravitational fluctuations, only made things worse. Fascinating technology, isn't it? Ambassador Chen had entered the observation deck so quietly I hadn't noticed. We call it the Mars Defense Grid. Took us about 30 years to build, right under your surveillance drones. Amazing what you can hide when people assume you're just setting up primitive mining operations. The engineering required. I struggled to comprehend the scale of the project. How did you manage to construct this without detection? Oh, that was the easy part. We made sure your drones saw exactly what they expected to see. Primitive excavation equipment, basic habitat modules, nothing that would raise suspicions. The hard part was developing technology that could manipulate gravity with this level of precision. We had to fundamentally rethink our approach to physics. On our displays, the Pradax fleet was completely immobilized. Their energy weapons, when they tried to fire them, found their beams curved back on themselves by the distorted space. Their shields, calibrated for normal spacetime, fluctuated wildly in the gravitational chaos. War Master Kex, Admiral Santos broadcast again. Your weapons are ineffective, your engines are offline, and your communications are limited to the frequencies we allow. Would you like to discuss diplomatic relations now? Kex's response was a stream of untranslatable expletives, followed by activation of the fleet's experimental quantum torpedoes, weapons that supposedly could punch through any defense by briefly shifting into another dimension. The humans had apparently prepared for this too. As the torpedoes launched, hundreds of small objects detached from the Martian facilities. They looked like simple maintenance drones, but as they intercepted the quantum torpedoes, they demonstrated their true purpose. Quantum field manipulators, Chen explained, noting my confusion. They create localized pockets of altered quantum states. When a torpedo tries to shift dimensions, it finds the dimensional barriers have been reinforced. Rather like trying to phase through a wall only to discover it's been specifically hardened against phase shifting. The torpedoes, unable to complete their dimensional shift, simply fizzled out. The Pradax fleet hung helpless in space, caught in a three-dimensional web of gravitational distortions, their most advanced weapons rendered useless by human countermeasures. You see, Chen continued, we had decades to prepare for every possible form of attack. While you thought we were struggling with basic rocketry, we were actually testing defenses against technologies we glimpsed in your secure databases. Every time your surveillance picked up a failed experiment or a primitive prototype, we were actually field testing advanced systems under camouflage. But why Mars? I asked. Why not build these defenses around Earth? She smiled. Who says we haven't? Mars is just the outer layer, the first surprise for anyone who thinks they can intimidate us. Earth has its own defenses, different ones, based on different principles. We've learned not to put all our eggs in one basket, as we say. Incoming transmission from the Pradax fleet. A human operator announced. War Master Kex is requesting diplomatic discussions. Chen's smile widened slightly. Amazing how a shift in perspective can lead to more reasonable attitudes. Please, inform the War Master that we'll be happy to discuss terms once his fleet has withdrawn to Saturn's orbit, as originally requested. As the Pradax ships were carefully released from the gravitational web and began their humiliating retreat, I realized humanity had just demonstrated something remarkable. They hadn't just prepared for conflict, they had prepared for every type of conflict, developing countermeasures for weapons they shouldn't have known existed. The galaxy was going to have to radically reassess its understanding of humanity. They weren't just another emerging civilization to be guided or controlled. They were something new, a species that had turned paranoia into an art form, preparation into a science, and strategic deception into a way of life. And I had a feeling we still hadn't seen their most impressive capabilities yet. The knowledge seekers. In the aftermath of the Pradax incident, the Confederation launched a thorough investigation into human activities throughout galactic space. What we discovered shook our understanding of the past 50 years of galactic history. I sat in Earth's diplomatic center in Geneva, reviewing the findings with Ambassador Chen. The room's massive windows overlooked Lake Geneva, its waters reflecting the afternoon sun. It seemed impossible that just a week ago, we had thought this world was barely advancing beyond fossil fuels. "Would you like to explain this?" I asked, projecting a hologram of a seemingly ordinary Confederation merchant vessel. Our records show this ship visited 17 major worlds over the past decade, conducting routine trade in cultural artifacts. "Ah, the Star Wanderer," Chen replied, sipping her tea. "One of our early intelligence gatherers. The cultural artifacts were genuine, by the way. We've always believed that understanding art and culture is as important as understanding technology." I cycled through more images, dozens of merchant ships, cultural exchange programs, academic visits, all apparently normal activities that we now realized had been part of an elaborate intelligence operation. Every ship, I noted, every diplomatic mission, every cultural exchange. They were all gathering data, but how did you maintain such perfect cover? "Our security systems are based on detecting known methods of espionage," Chen interrupted. "We developed entirely new approaches. Why try to hack a quantum-encrypted database when you can learn just as much from analyzing our collections? Why risk detection stealing technical documents when you can deduce technological capabilities from power grid fluctuations?" She stood and walked to the window. "Did you know that we learned more about Zarn energy field technology from studying their music than from any technical surveillance? The harmonics they use reflect their understanding of energy wave manipulation. Or that we deduced Malaysian FTL principles by analyzing the patterns in their ceremonial architecture." I felt my tendrils curl in disbelief. "You gained technical intelligence from cultural analysis. Humans have a talent for pattern recognition," she explained. "We see connections others miss. While your intelligence services were watching for traditional espionage, we were sending anthropologists, musicians, art historians, people trained to understand how culture reflects technology and vice versa." The hologram shifted to show a human university campus. "This is the Institute of Xenocultural Analysis. Every piece of alien art, every cultural artifact, every scrap of literature we collected was studied not just for its cultural significance, but for what it could tell us about the species that created it." "Like, surely not all your intelligence came from cultural analysis," I pressed. Chen's smile turned slightly mischievous. "Of course not. Remember those primitive communication satellites we launched? Each one contained sophisticated sensors designed to analyze any scan performed on them. When your ships examined them, they were actually examining us. But we were learning about your scanning technology in the process." She returned to her seat. "Even our internet, which you dismissed as a crude information network, was part of the deception. All those cat videos and social media posts helped mask the quantum-encrypted communications happening beneath the surface." I cycled through more records, seeing human influence in places we had never thought to look. Their tourist visits to space stations had mapped our defense capabilities. Their participation in academic conferences had given them insight into our theoretical research. Even their seeming fascination with alien fashion had helped them understand our biotechnology. "There's something I don't understand," I said finally. "With all this intelligence, all this preparation, why reveal yourselves now? Why not continue gathering information?" Because we had learned enough, Chen replied simply. We confirmed that while many species in the Confederation might be hostile, not all of you are. We learned that despite your technological advancement, you still have much to learn and much to teach. Most importantly, we learned that peaceful coexistence is possible, even if we have to demonstrate our strength to achieve it. She leaned forward. Humanity's greatest strength isn't our technology or our deception capabilities. It's our ability to learn, to adapt, to see patterns others miss. We spent 50 years studying not just your weapons and defenses, but your art, your music, your cultures. We wanted to understand who you are, not just what you can do. The implications were staggering. While we had watched humans taking their first tentative steps into space, they had been conducting the most comprehensive anthropological study in galactic history. They hadn't just prepared for war. They had prepared for peace by developing a deep understanding of every species they might encounter. I should inform you, Chen added casually, that everything I've told you about our intelligence gathering was cleared for release days ago. Consider it a gesture of trust, and a reminder that what we're willing to reveal is probably just the surface of our capabilities. Looking out over the lake, I understood that humanity had revolutionized not just space warfare, but intelligence gathering itself. They had turned cultural exchange into an intelligence operation so subtle that we never saw it for what it was, and they had done it all while maintaining their cover as a primitive emerging civilization. The galaxy would never be the same, and perhaps that had been humanity's goal all along, not just to defend themselves, but to understand their place in a complex galactic society. They had turned their paranoia into wisdom, their caution into comprehension, and their isolation into an unprecedented opportunity for learning. And I suspected they were still far from done teaching us just how much we had to learn. A new understanding. 1 year after humanity's true capabilities were revealed, I stood before the Confederation Council again. This time, I wasn't there to explain a diplomatic crisis, but to present my analysis of how humanity had fundamentally changed galactic civilization. The council chamber had changed. Where once representatives had displayed their technological and biological superiority through elaborate augmentations and energy fields, now many had adopted simpler appearances. Humanity's demonstration that appearances could be deceiving had left a lasting mark. In the past year, I began, humanity has shared precisely 37 technological innovations with the Confederation. Not their most advanced technologies, but carefully chosen developments that would benefit all species without disrupting the balance of power. I activated the chamber's holographic display, showing one of the new human diplomatic vessels. Unlike their early gray ships, these were beautiful crystalline structures that somehow combined elements of every major species' architectural styles. But more important than their technological contributions has been their perspective on civilization itself. Humanity has shown us that advancement doesn't follow a single path. While we focused on continuous expansion of existing technologies, they explored entirely new principles. While we built ever larger ships, they developed ways to fold space around smaller ones. The display shifted to show the Mars Defense Grid, now a center for joint human Confederation research. Their defensive technologies weren't just weapons, but expressions of their understanding of fundamental physics. They didn't try to overcome gravity. They learned to speak its language. Ambassador Chen, now a permanent member of the council, nodded slightly from her seat. In the past year, she had become known for asking questions that made other representatives reconsider their most basic assumptions. But perhaps most significantly, I continued, humanity has taught us to look beyond surface appearances. Their cultural analysis program has revolutionized how we understand each other. We've learned more about Zarn energy manipulation by studying human interpretations of Zarn music than we did in centuries of direct technological exchange. The chamber was quiet, but it was the silence of deep thought, rather than the stunned silence of a year ago. The representatives were finally beginning to understand what humanity had been trying to teach us all along. They hid their capabilities not out of fear or hostility, I explained, but because they wanted to understand us first. While we saw them as primitive, they were studying us from every angle. Our technologies, yes, but also our art, our music, our cultures. They didn't just prepare for war, they prepared for understanding. I brought up a final image, a new installation orbiting Earth's moon. This is the Galactic Cultural Institute, humanity's gift to the Confederation. Here, species from across the galaxy can study not just each other's technologies, but their arts, their philosophies, their ways of thinking. Humanity believes that true advancement comes not from superior weapons or bigger ships, but from deeper understanding. War Master Kex, who had become one of humanity's strongest advocates after the Mars incident, raised his now unaugmented claw. They have taught us that strength can wear many faces. The Pradax Collective has begun incorporating cultural analysis into our military training. We find it illuminating. Indeed, I agreed. Humanity's greatest contribution hasn't been their technology, but their perspective. They've shown us that a civilization's true advancement isn't measured by the power of their weapons or the size of their ships, but by their ability to understand and adapt to new ideas. Ambassador Chen stood, her simple black suit now a familiar sight in the chamber. "We have a saying on Earth," she said, "the more you know, the more you realize how much you don't know. Our 50 years of studying your civilizations taught us that there's always more to learn. We hid our capabilities not because we feared you, but because we wanted to understand you first." She smiled that now familiar smile that suggested both amusement and wisdom. "And we're still learning. Every species in this chamber has something to teach us, just as we have something to teach them. That's the real secret of advancement, not trying to prove superiority, but always being ready to learn." As I concluded my presentation, I realized that humanity had done more than just surprise us with their hidden capabilities. They had forced us to reconsider everything we thought we knew about civilization, advancement, and power. They had shown us that true strength lies not in weapons or technology, but in understanding and adaptation. The galaxy had changed. The old hierarchies based on technological advancement were giving way to new networks of cultural and intellectual exchange. Species that had once competed to build the largest weapons now collaborated to understand each other's art and music. And at the center of it all was humanity, not ruling or dominating, but teaching and learning, showing us that the path to the stars could be as much about understanding as it was about power. They had proven themselves the most dangerous species in the galaxy not through superior firepower, but through superior understanding. And in doing so, they had made the galaxy a far more interesting place. As I left the council chamber, I heard Ambassador Chen talking with a group of representatives about Earth's next contribution to galactic civilization, something she called comedy. Judging by the expressions of confusion on the aliens' faces, humanity wasn't done surprising us yet. And somehow, I was looking forward to whatever they would teach us next.